Welcome to Women Laughing with Salad, not the meme, but the show where we talk about what's flooding your Facebook feed. Joining me today are Chatelaine senior writer Sarah Boesveld and Supriya Dwivedi, who is the host of AM 640's morning show. So last week, Anthony Weiner, who is a former congressman, pled guilty to charges of transferring obscenity to a minor, and in this case it was a 15-year-old girl that he had been sexting with. Anthony Weiner is the husband of Huma Abedin, who is a longtime Hillary Clinton aide. She was the vice chair of her campaign. Many people wonder why Huma didn't leave her loser husband in 2011 when this first happened. So in 2011, they were married, she was pregnant. These kinds of things came out in the most embarrassing way, which was that he doesn't know how to use technology on top of being a creep. So he tweeted out a picture of an erection instead of sending it as a private message to the intended recipient, who was a 21-year-old woman. So she's filed for divorce finally, like 6 years later. What is she gonna do now? Like, I wanna know what you guys think her next step should be now that she doesn't have to babysit a grown man.
So there's two things about Huma's future that I think are really interesting. One, she's actually never had a real job outside of the Clinton orbit. So whether that means she was working at the Clinton Foundation, whether she was working for Hillary Clinton as First Lady, later as a senator, then as Secretary of State, and then on her presidential campaign, she has this whole world in front of her, I feel like, now that she's Saw's Hillary, but also Saw's loser husband, in which, honestly, like, she's so young, she's so talented, obviously, that I think her world is her oyster. I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but I really hope she, you know, had her days of watching Waiting to Exhale and is now on to Stella Got Her Groove Back, and she's back out there on the dating scene.
What about you?
It is fascinating that it took so long to divorce this guy, you know, it just one scandal after another, but also it's interesting to think about it in the Hillary Clinton context too, because she had Hillary Clinton as really a role model as well as her boss. Yeah. And she stayed with Bill Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. I think she sort of learned that, like, stick around, the good wife thing from Hillary, and so it is sort of interesting to ponder a next chapter for Huma.
I think she's worked really hard. So she's been, you know, with the Clintons for like over 20 years now in some capacity. I want her to go and like work remotely as a consultant, like in the Maldives or something, and then her like triumphant return to America is as like the first over 40 bachelorette. That's what I want for her.
That's a very comprehensive sort of dream for somebody.
I think the nation kind of like owes it to her to give her like, you know, 20 of their best and brightest men to be like, you choose.
She's done her time.
You don't even have to date. You choose. Yeah, that's the American dream, I think. So the 5th season of House of Cards is going to premiere on May 30th, and it's about this, you know, couple, Frank and Claire Underwood, who are super sneaky, and they're just trying to take over the White House, and they kind of successfully do so. And at the end of the 4th season, basically they're trying to take it over as like president and VP, and it just seems like, it seemed at the time very, very scary. And now it's kind of like, what could season 5 possibly contain that would be scarier than real life?
Wouldn't it be great if he was giving a presser and was like, I could shoot somebody on 5th Avenue and people would still vote for me?
Oh my God.
Like actual quotes?
The whole appeal of House of Cards is just the nasty, evil, dark side of politics, and it really confirms a lot of people's you know, reinforces a lot of people's beliefs about politics and how dastardly they really are.
So much that we're living through is just sheer ridiculousness in terms of perhaps collusion with the foreign adversary, in terms of the campaign, and whether or not he actually understands half of the things that he's briefed on, or the fact that he has no attention span, and foreign leaders all know that he has no attention span, you know, mixing up in interviews which country he has sent bombs to, like, and it goes on and on and on. So I think there's a certain sense of being able to draw from that, although to be honest, both Claire and Frank Underwood are arguably much smarter than Trump and a lot of his administration, because I think what's so striking about some of the you know, criticism that level at the Trump campaign is that not only is he inexperienced, but so much of his inner circle is so inexperienced, and at least Frank and Claire know how to get it done and know that their inner circle are all government insiders as well.
And that they're really a team, like Melania and Donald are
did
not.
You see the hand slap?
Yeah, the hand slap.
I'm giving her some credit. I've been calling it a backhanded high five. Like, that's just their secret handshake code. It's just like, you know. I'm flipping the script.
I didn't read it that way. I read it as, like, I do not want to hold your hand right now, and I harbor a deep disdain for you. After what seems like forever, the Conservatives are finally going to choose their leader on May 27th. This comes after a united Conservative Party under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, so it is the first time where the Conservatives will choose, under a united manner, their leader. Nobody really knows who's going to win. There's a lot of polls out there that says Maxime Bernier is the front runner. He's a Quebec-based MP. However, it doesn't really take into account the fact that people are able to rank their ballots, and regionality really matters. So Maxime may win, however, the computer may just go beep, bop, boop, boop, and spit out somebody that nobody expected and somebody coming up the middle. So the race is really anybody's game, and political insiders have been watching it with much anticipation.
For a long time.
For a long time.
Since last May.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been going on forever. And look, I think it will be very interesting because there are arguably two factions within the Conservative Party that I don't think anybody really realized, but Stephen Harper did an amazing job of holding that coalition together in a way that if you don't have him there, who knows what's going to happen. If it is a social conservative that comes through, I worry for the future of the Conservative Party under that united front.
Yeah, especially since nobody's been talking about women at all during the Conservative election, the leadership race. You noticed it? You noticed that?
Yeah.
You know, if a social conservative does get in, then we are going to see debates in the House of Commons about abortion access, when life begins, you know, and that is stuff that Stephen Harper had successfully kept out of the conversation while he's in there. Whatever his personal beliefs, and I don't know that we ever really got his personal beliefs on that unless...
And honestly, like, that's kind of the way I like it. Like, I know Lisa Raitt, who is one of the Conservative candidates, has said that while she herself has pro-life views, she's never going to bring the debate back up, and she supports ultimately that it being a private decision. So I'm like, cool, you know, that's kind of the way I think Canadians, we like to be polite about it, you know, and it's like keep it in the back room, but.
Like, what I think is kind of interesting is, like, last year at this time when Rona Ambrose took over as interim party leader, and she made that big speech, and she made a really big deal that the Conservatives are kind of like the first progressives of Canada, that they had, like, you know, the first female cabinet minister and the first. And, like, you know, she called the Conservatives a feminist party, essentially, is how she cast them. And in the last year, that's kind of totally fallen apart. So I think that's really interesting, with the contrast between just her as the leader in the last year, who's also, like, tried to keep things together. I would say, like, as interim leader, she's done a really good job.
I think she's done a great job,
And then, like, all the candidates who are kind of, like, one, all over the place, but two, a lot of them are social conservatives, and it kind of seems like a step backwards for the party.
The thing about Maxime Bernier is that he's got a very clear message of, you know, like a libertarian view. You know, whatever his plans were for the CBC, like either get rid of it or defund it. Supply management is a big thing.
Wants to cut everybody's taxes. No boutique tax credits, just tax cuts across the board, which I think could resonate with a lot of people.
Totally. So and he's got the charisma that could go up against Justin Trudeau. He's got Quebec, which is important.
Absolutely.
He's when we talk about regionality, and so I think. If the Conservatives feel like they need to shake things up, they're going to try to vote for somebody different from Harper, you know, very different. And Bernier is really the only clear person who's really different in a way that seems to have some heft with people.
The one thing I will say about Maxime Bernier, and Althea Raj of HuffPost has touched on this, but he used to be a separatist. He used to work for the Parti Québécois, and so that's something that I think may eventually come back to haunt him. Maybe not, who knows. He also once left very important papers at his girlfriend's house. And his girlfriend...
Nobody's been talking about that, which I find so interesting.
I do too, actually. But anyway, I think he's sort of built a new narrative for himself, and I think in terms of defining him from the rest of the pack, he's done an excellent job. Arguably, the question is who can beat the Liberals in 2019, and if that's what you're running with, it's certainly not going to be a Brad Schroes, a Kelly Leach, or a Pierre Lemire.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.